Hey guys, welcome back to Math 9, the introduction to Chapter 8, Circle Geometry. So while we're going online for the next couple of weeks, and we're going to be working and doing this at home, I know that sometimes our internet isn't always great, or we end up late, or any number of reasons could happen where it makes it difficult for us to get the full lesson. So I was asked by a student to make sure, or to see if I could make sure I had a really good video for you guys of the lesson that you're going to need to know. So know this to begin with, because it's going to have a lot of information in it. This one's a little bit longer. I may be changing volume as I work, so please make sure you are adjusting your sound as needed. So you can thank Aaron for all the extra. So in the handouts that I will have been giving to you guys, you are going to, or online, you're going to see the notes that I have posted that has everything in it. Now, what I told you guys before is we're going to be putting these notes down into our foldable that we started, or that you have paper for, or we built last class already. So just know that there's more details here. If you need to go back to the notes to double check what you're doing and make sure that you copied it properly into your foldable, you can do that. Also know that the notes in this presentation are a little bit fancier, and you probably are going to write down like the simpler definition with all the fancy vocabulary kind of removed from it. So welcome to circular geometry and what you're going to be needing to know. So you're going to learn to apply properties of circles to determine the measures of unknown angles and line segments. And you're going to be solving problems involving different properties of circles. So we have this beautiful foldable that you guys started making last class. So you guys folded it together, you guys put your paper in, and you have all of these things kind of set up. And the only thing that we did not do that last class was on the front cover, just add in the title that this unit is Circle Geometry. And then on mine, I have a large circle. So if I kind of switch my screen over to this, you can see I put a title of Circle Geometry, and then I put a giant circle on there to, practice my compass using skills to draw circles. Some of you at home may choose to find a large circular object and take that and kind of trace it. And that is kind of your choice how you would like to do that. Now on this circle, I added in a diameter, which is something that you guys should know what that is. I also added in a radius. Once again, you should know what that is. And this one is brand new for you guys. I added in a chord, spelt chord, but it's pronounced chord, C-H-O-R-D. And I also labeled the circumference. Okay, so this is just the notes that you're going to need for Chapter 8. That's just kind of my cover page. You can kind of do with that as you want, add colors, pictures, design, make it as fancy as you may choose. So let's go back to our note page. So we are going to be doing this unit in a different order. The textbook has 8.1, which is tangents, and then 2, which is chords, and 8.3, which is angles. But we're going to start with chords, because you're going to see that this one kind of comes up in all 3 of the different sections. So it's kind of important that we get it done. So after this lesson, you will be able to describe the relationship that exists between the center of a circle, a chord, and the perpendicular bisector of the chord. So if you don't know what all those words mean yet, don't you worry, we're going to be going over them. So here are some key words. The first key word is a chord. And a chord is simply a line segment that has 2 endpoints on a circle. So this and this, 2 endpoints of a line segment. We should remember that a line segment just is a fancy way to say a line, okay, at the ends of a circle. Now, a chord that travels through the center of a circle is the diameter. So this is a very important word that you're going to be referring to and using all the time. So you guys are actually going to take the time, take out your foldable, open it up, and you're going to take one of your little flaps, your very first one, and you're going to add in this vocabulary word for yourself. So you're going to write in chord on the outside. Then when you open it up in the inside, you're going to put the definition of it. So a chord is a line segment that has both endpoints on a circle. And then what I did is I drew an example over here, and I drew in a chord. Okay, so this is the first vocabulary word that's going to come up over and over in this unit that is very important that you know. Okay, so if you need to pause the video to write this out, feel free to do so. I'm going to keep going for now. All right, so you need to know that about a chord. Now, when it comes to chords, normally at this point, if we were all in the classroom together, I would be taking out a piece of paper and asking you to draw a circle. So you would take out scissors, a compass, a protractor, and a ruler. You do all of these things, and you would construct and then cut out a large circle. Okay, and you'd label the center of your circle with an O. Okay, so if I kind of show you an example, so you would take a big circle and you would label the center of your circle with an O. So I didn't actually label where my original center was. So this is kind of a guess, so it may not be perfect, but we're going to pretend it's perfect, and that is the center of my circle at this time. Okay, so we would be doing this so far. After that point, I would ask you to choose 2 endpoints and label them A and B on the circle. If we go back to my circle, I'm going to put A on the side over there, and I'm going to put B on the side over on that side. A and B. Then I would ask you to join these points to form the line segment AB. And I would ask you to make sure AB doesn't go through the center of the circle at this time. I'm going to take out my ruler. I'm going to combine or go to both sides, and I am going to connect A to B. After we do that, I would have asked you to fold the circle so that A coincides with B and mark the point C where their fold line intersects. What that means is I would physically take the circle and I would fold it so that the letter A lands on top of the letter B. And fold my paper. Once it's folded, I would take a pencil and put a point and label that as letter C. Once we have done that step, it is going to ask you to repeat the steps by adding in 2 more points for D and E on the circle. Once again, go back to the circle, and I'm going to kind of turn my circle around. I'm going to put the letter D over here and the letter E over here, and I'm going to connect those 2 points. And once again, I'm going to fold my circle so that those 2 points land on top of each other. And I would label this one point F. So you can kind of see what this is looking like at this time. So after you have done this, I suppose I should go back to it, we would question you and ask you, what do you notice and what do you see? Okay, so when I folded this in half, there's my point C. What are you noticing? Okay, when I folded this one in half, there's my point F. What are you noticing? So I'm hoping that when you see this, you will see that these lines are connecting at the center of my circle. I'm hoping that you notice that if I were to draw an actual line here, that you can see that that would be a 90-degree angle. I would also hope that you can realize that when I connected these dots to each other and folded it, that both sides would be the same length as each other. If I were to physically take out a ruler, both sides would be equivalent. Now we would do all of these things and you guys would have learned all of these rules, but seeing as how you're at home, I'm hoping that you can still see them and understand them. So when it comes to chords, there is actually 3 chord properties. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and we just discovered all of them in that little circle. Chord property number 1. The perpendicular from the center of a circle to a chord bisects the chord. Okay, so really what that is meaning for chord property number 1 is that if we are cutting this chord in half, it is making a 90-degree angle. Okay, so I did throw in an extra word of bisector. You know what? This is a vocabulary word that I feel like you probably should add in. So it's going to just pause and add that in real quick. Vocabulary word number 2, second flap on your piece of paper. A bisector. This is a word that you should remember from, I believe it's in the 7th grade geometry unit. So bisector, and what a bisector is a line segment that cuts another line segment exactly in half at a 90-degree angle. Okay, so it's cut in half and it is at 90 degrees. So I put an example here. I also put an example on a circle, and you can choose to write down either example of your choosing when you guys are doing this for yourself, but you should be putting an example of what this word means so that you can refer to it in case you are forgetting. So bisector means cut in half. So that being said, we're going to go to the center and our big circle, because in the inside we are actually going to be writing down all of our chord properties. So I put mine on the very back circle. It doesn't really matter where you're going to start writing them in for yourselves. I put mine on the back, and I kind of shortened the instructions a little bit from the big note package. So perpendicular to chord property number 1 is simply when we cut a chord in half, we create a bisector. When we cut a chord in half, we create a bisector with a perpendicular line that touches the center of the circle. Okay, so what you need to know is that if this is where my center of the circle is, then the angle of OCB is 90 degrees. And the angle of OCA is also 90 degrees, which means that AC is equal to CB. So when I cut it in half, it is a bisector. It is 90 degrees. That is chord property number 1. Chord property number 2. When we cut a chord in half, creating a bisector, the bisector will always cross the center of the circle every time. If I cut a chord in half at 90 degrees, it will cross the center of the circle. And that doesn't matter how big of a chord you have on any side of your circle. And chord property number 3 that you must know. And while you already talked about this in chord property 1 and chord property 2, you need to know that chord property 3 just specifically implies that when we cut a chord in half, they are the same, it crosses the center, and it creates a 90-degree angle. Okay, so these chord properties really all go together, 1, 2, and 3. I'm not quite exactly sure why they have them all separated, and you will have some questions that is going to ask you what chord property was used to solve this problem. So it's important that you know what they are. So chord property 1, split in half. Chord property 2, touches center. Chord property 3, makes a 90-degree angle. So if we go back to our vocabulary, so we kind of showed with ticks here to show chord property 1, chord property 2. I don't really have anything on there, but chord property 2 would have meant going to the center of the circle. And chord property 3, it is always going to make 90-degree angles. So those are your chord properties and what you need to know. And with that, you can solve all types of problems. So we're going to go through a few of these in the next video. If you need extra help going through them, if you are someone who is brave enough to attempt to do a little bit on your own, you're free to also try to do some of that before checking out video number 2. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you in class.